How's it going, everyone? So we're here for a big Rust update, but it's mostly not stuff you can really show all that much. It's a bunch of changes to how the game works, or meta changes, however you want to call it. And of course, that's probably why this is called the meta update. So, aim cone has been reduced. That is a big thing. Hulk also adjusted the aim cone specifically on the custom SMG, the SAP, and the LR300. So they're more closer to the center. If you want to read about that in details, you can go and read the actual dev blog. They've also modified a lot of the attachments. The burst mod is now been reduced to 2 times instead of a 3 times fire rate. Honestly, this just kind of helps you keep a better rate of fire. So it's not that bad. The Holo sight has had a huge change. You can see it physically change shape. So we'll show that in game as well, because that's actually really worth taking a look at. The muzzle brake and boost have both had their negatives reduced, so you can actually, we'll check that out and look at the actual stats. And then the LR itself has had a lot of tweaks to the damage fall off. It's much further away. The burst mode has been adjusted, and they're saying now the LR should be the best in class AR. And of course, everything can still change. So we'll see how that goes, and go from there. In addition to that, a lot of items have actually become cheaper, as Hell calls this the sale. HV ammo now has been reduced from 6 to 2 times the cost of HV ammo was before. You now get 5 torpedoes per craft instead of 3. Incendiary rockets have been reduced in cost, and they have a better flame spread like the new flamethrower. And drones no longer require tech trash, and 1 gear has been removed from the HMLMG. So those are some pretty decent changes there. Then another thing, walls. Walls have been changed quite a bit. Not only can you now pick up a wall after placing it, there is also much better snapping, and you have to actually kind of like hold still to place it, so they're trying to make it to where they're not a PvP wall anymore. So what they did is they made the PvP barricade bigger. So we'll be sure to show you that here in details. The Bradley has also had a bunch of changes, but again, it's just kind of one of those harder things to show. So it's basically 80% health, 2 scientists will pop out at 60% health, so just above half. 4 more will pop out, and then at just below 50% at 40 there, 6 more final scientists will come out. And they're supposed to be more aggressive, the AI is supposed to be improved, and so forth. So that's really nice as well. Next big thing to see some changes is going to be the patrol helicopter. It has a new thing called monument crashing. The helicopter will now try to crash at the nearest monument. So it's one of those things where if you're trying to crash it in your own walls, it might not be the thing anymore. So people will have to contest it. So, I mean, that does make it kind of feel like, oh, well, if I took the effort to shoot it down in my own safe zone, I should have that. But then at the same time, it's kind of like, oh, well, it does make more PvP, which everyone else wants. So I don't know. How do you guys feel about the monument crashing? And of course, it won't land in safe zones. So that is something to consider. And also, server owners can turn it off there as well. Flee behavior has been changed as well. It previously would flee when people didn't mean to damage it. Now it will flee when you're sitting at 30% of its overall. And then they've also done some other fixes and so forth to kind of help it with its targeting and so forth. Alright, another big change is going to be the safe zone recyclers. They now look different. They're sporting an all yellow color, and that's because they actually are worse. They give you 20% less of what you would get, or you can say they yield 80% of what they used to. So you're nerfed with that. But there's a buff to any of the non-safe zone recyclers. These have actually gone up by 40% to 120% of a difference. Well, I'd say they went up 20%, but it's a 40% difference between the new safe zone recycler. So this is a very big change that I think will make people go out, be out, and around with the monuments much, much more. Some other things we're going to kind of go through quickly. Cargo ship has had a lot of changes. It now docks at both harbors instead of just one. And then the containers also have been tweaked and so forth. So there should be some more playability. If you want to see the details, again, they're going to be here on the blog. View model renders. Some things have been very old, back all the way into 2021. these have been updated, so this should be helping with performance. Then with that, they've worked on AI to help with AI server performance across the board, which is beautiful. That's, lag. And then effects performance. So now effects are now warmed up correctly during loading times. I guess some of them weren't. This was causing frame rate drops for people, and this should be something that's now improved greatly, if not completely fixed. So that's really nice. They've done some improvements for map uploading, so that has to do with procedural maps. And then also Harmony 2, they've been updated to Harmony 2. This has a lot to do with how Oxide and other things work server side, and now they have updated. So this should give a large performance to large servers that had a lot of mods. So if you've been playing on a really large server with a lot of mods and it's really laggy, this should be something that helps with that. So yeah, that's kind of the thing there. Now, the one big thing I am going to just use the blog for, it is all the electricity changes, because there's just so many of them, and it's visualized really easily here on the blog. So the Tulsa coil and igniter, they used to die. Instead, now they will stop at 10% and just plainly turn off. So that's nice. They won't just break and disappear. You don't have to replace them, redo wiring and all that. You can just repair them, but they do stop working at 10%, which I think is a lot more clear now rather than just vanishing. Then the electrical branch has been reduced. The minimum is now from 2 to 1 for the out. The buttons press time has been reduced from 5 to 1 second. Storage monitor will now recognize partial stacks when it's going through, removal, especially if you have it set up like an automated system. The splitter had a power distribution issue when you weren't using all of the outputs. This was something that's very noticeable if you do a lot of electrical stuff. That's a huge fix. That's really nice. Memory cell is now triggerable by 0 power circuits, which it wasn't before. The timer switch has been issued a fix as well. It was having inconsistency with circuits and should now be updating its state properly. The counter had some issues as well, which have been fixed. It had to do with, I guess, show pass through and so forth. I'm not familiar with that issue personally myself, but it now looks like that will be showing properly, which is really nice. The RF receiver has had its recipe fixed. It's now dropped 150 metal frags and no longer requires tech trash. The broadcaster has done the same. It's dropped 150 frags and the tech trash. And the same thing with the transmitter. It's actually gone from 5 HQM to 100 metal frags and no tech trash anymore. The pager has also seen a dip of 50 metal frags up. So it has gone from 50 to 100, but it no longer requires tech trash. Then the AND, or XOR switches no longer emit light when there's no power actually going to them, which is nice for people trying to figure out what's all going on with their big circuitry or big old electrical setups. Conveyor can be placed upside down once again, which is nice. And then the simple light, industrial light is no longer referred to as a simple light. Okay, so there you go, they fixed that. And the smart switch is referred to as a switch when looking at I/O connections. So there you go. I guess it previously wasn't showing up as a switch. That's another one I wasn't familiar with myself. But that does it for pretty much all the side stuff. Let's jump in game and take a look at everything we can. All right, so let's go ahead and get into it. There's quite a few changes, and they're all just kind of to change up the game and change the feel and see how it can go. And the first thing that we're going to check out here is going to be the workbenches. There's now a workbench tax starting on Workbench 2 and also with Workbench 3. And basically what this does is it makes it more expensive for you to be using the actual workbench versus finding an item, trading an item, getting an item some way, and bringing it over to the actual research bench, right? So what the tax is right now is 10% on 2 and 20% on 3. And they said this is something that can change. We'll just have to see how it is. Workbench 1 doesn't have any sort of tax on it. So to kind of show you how this works is, if we go in here and take a look at the SAR, which there it is, you'll see it costs 138 scrap to learn it in the bench once you get to it, where it's still 125 as usual if you just put in the bench. Same thing for the AK, it is 500 here in the research bench, but in the workbench it's going to cost you 600 with the extra 20%. And you can see that 500 plus 100 for 20%. They at least show you the math right there, which is nice. So yeah, that's a big change. How does everyone feel about that? That's kind of a really big deal. And do you think it's really going to help? Or is it just going to make it harder for the solo? Love hearing what you all feel about that down in the comment section. So the next thing is there's some building changes. And the first one's going to be, there's now a timer to be able to place another floor or foundation, just like there was for walls. So if I load this foundation here, you'll see that it actually won't let me place a new foundation yet, and it has the same cooldown just like walls. So there you go, and this applies to floors, or well, ceilings I should say. So that is another big change. This is going to be changing up everybody's reseal kind of meta, so to say. Then when we've got other building changes, the door controller has seen some improvements. You have your pass through, power in, and then you have your open and close, and you can simply just string these up to some buttons and have some power going to it, and then, you know, keep continuing. And these two buttons could control multiple doors or whatever you want to do, however you want to set up. But the main thing is, as you'll see, it actually places now, instead of you having to finagle it onto, you know, some random spot somewhere, it actually places directly next to the code lock now. It has its own designated spot. And with that, it also means that if the person doesn't have the code lock, they can't mess with the actual controller. That means raiders can't just come around and start pressing buttons, there's cargo ship, and messing around with your base. So that is a nice little addition as well to make electricity a little more secure. Moving on, we did say we would show you that new Holo site in game. So there you go. It's very square, but it takes up less space, I feel like, and also gives you back more space. I think that's just a really nice addition to that. As for the stats on the muzzle boost and break, you can see that it is plus 10 and minus 10. And we've got minus 15, minus 23 accuracy, but plus 50% recoil. So there you go with that, with the changes on those. Then we'll go ahead and take a look at a few other things here. The first thing is going to be the SKS model. A lot of you guys have probably seen this floating around here and there, or maybe even saw the whole thread on Twitter. If you didn't, originally this was going to be released as a skin, and not a separate skin. It was going to be added to the Nomad Hazmat pack. So if you already owned it, this would be added for no additional charge, and for anyone else, they could pick it up and there would be no extra charge. It's just part of the pack now. But a bunch of people whined and said, well, this should be a real gun. I mean, I do have to say, look at how beautiful this is. Almost does seem a little bit like a waste to use it as just a skin, right? Well, the devs have heard the community about it and said that they are holding off and releasing it this update, and they're going to rethink it. So it could potentially end up staying a skin, or it could turn into a whole nother gun. Right now, it is a SAR skin. It has exactly the same stats as a SAR. It does have its own beautiful sounds, and it's just really nice. But they did say, hey, we are working on tier 1 and 2 guns. They are still coming. So that's why they weren't too concerned about this being a skin. But hey, how do you guys feel? Would you rather see this become a new tier 2 gun, or do you care if it's a skin added to your pack? You know, basically, how do you feel about that? Next thing is going to be barricades. As you see up here, the barricade has doubled just in size, not in price. And they also snap to each other, so you can do some fancy snapping going along. You can left shift to disable said snapping. And yeah, you can just build like a whole kind of little something with it. I think it's a nice change. Before, they were really too small to use and do anything with. I think this is a pretty good compromise. But you're asking, well, what's the whole reason for this? That's because high externals have been completely changed. They now require you to hold completely still. You cannot be moving. See how I'm moving around? It turns red. If I hold still, you can still move left or right, up and down, you know, with your eyes, but you can't physically move your character around. And once you do, you actually have to hold it for about 3 seconds to place a new wall. Another big change is that they snap much better to each other. You should find that it's much easier to place and connect and really get walls over those weird gaps and so forth much more now. And in addition, you can actually right click and demolish the wall. You don't get the ball back, you don't get any resources, but hey, at least you don't have to waste 2 C4s worth of equivalent of explosives. Thank you, cargo ship. First we got neighbors' dogs, and then we got construction, and now we've got cargo ship in-game making noise over me. But yeah, you can pick up those walls. You've got 30 seconds to delete them in case you made a mistake, which is something people have been asking for forever. So that is actually a really nice addition, I'd have to say. So there we go, everyone. Those are kind of the big meta changes. How do you feel about that? Alright, and lastly everybody, launch site has seen some tweaking. So far, there's always been that possibility of where you go through, you do the effort to get the puzzle, you go through and none of the boxes are there. You wasted all your time, you wasted your key card, and nothing, right? Well, now they have gone ahead and fixed that. It was on a separate system for respawning. It's now on the proper system to be in sync with the key cards. So if you use your key card, the loot should be here unless someone did some kind of thing like, you know, fly up here and bypass it. But, you know, that's actually pretty decently hard now, but there's definitely people who can do it. Another thing is they've added other various loot spawns, so there's over 23 different loot spawns up in and around and throughout the launch site main puzzle now. So that should be something that's really great. But yeah, everyone, sound off how you feel about that. That's gonna do it. Go enjoy that wipe. Thanks for watching, and stay rusty.